Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Burning Question series by Fantasy Football Scout. In this series, Pras and I, Sonaldo, will talk about the key hot topic for the week. Given the multiple postponements, blank game weeks, and double game weeks, there is only one thing to talk about. How do we plan for all this commotion and chaos? But before we do that, welcome, Pras.
Hey man, how are you doing? Very good to be here. Very good to be talking about the most exciting time of the season, which is, blanks and doubles. So let's get going.
Yeah, before we started the stream, Pras wasn't in the best mood because of the Bowen and Antonio rumors going on, swirling around right now. But yeah, excited to get into today's topics. So for the agenda today, we'll mainly be discussing on planning for Game Week 22, which is pretty much a confirmed double game week in light of the fixtures leading up to it and after 21-22. So we'll consider things such as the AFCON and Chelsea blanks as well. We're going to be discussing optimal transfer strategies to target the doubles, as well as utilizing different chip strategies. This is sort of the agenda we do have today. So we have two fixtures that are... Sorry, my volume is a little bit weird. But we have two fixtures that we're going to... fixture charts that we're going to show you guys. Then we're going to go into chip strategies. So for our listeners in the podcast, we're going to talk about triple captain, free hit, no chips, and building a starting 11, transferring, bench boosting, and wildcarding out of Game Week 22, wildcard plus bench boost in 21 and 22, and also for first wildcard holders, we'll talk about that too. And then we'll get into our bus teams for Game Week 19. So a packed agenda.
Before we start the slide, I just wanted to kind of so for those people who are listening and saying, guys, we don't even know our Game Week 19 team. What the hell are you doing talking about 22 blanks and doubles? Look, I would say, of course, the main strategy is take it game week by game week. But hopefully what we'll try to bring across in these videos, and this one in particular, is that you still need to have the end goal in mind. So if, let's say, a player of yours is out in game week 19, you still need to know where the blanks are going in 22. So you know where to, who to replace him with and who's the right optimum, structurally the best player to get for. So that's why we want to be thinking about that, fully conscious that we're in the middle of a pandemic and every game can be called off. But we'll try our best, and hopefully it makes sense for anyone who's thinking about the doubles.
Yeah, obviously. So what Pras is basically saying is there's so much going on right now, so many unknowns and things that can change. But part of this is that we love this chaos in many ways as an FPL manager. So hopefully we can sort of navigate and hope things pull through. I do have the fixture chart that Pras generously made. Could you kind of explain what we have here, Pras?
So the idea here was, this is obviously firstly credit to everyone in the community who's pulled through with the doubles. Ben, obviously, Ben Krellin, you've got Lego Mane, Tom Freeman from FF Scout did an excellent article today as well. So what I did is I pulled through all the information that we have so far. So this chart is trying to kind of strategize around the double game week 22. Now, a lot of people may have seen that there could be a potential double in 21 as well. But the point there is that is still contingent on removing the second leg of the League Cup semi-final. So currently there's a second leg to happen. If that is taken away, then we could potentially have a double game week 21 as well. But for the moment, we pretty much are sure that we have a double game week 22 because they have removed the FA Cup replays, which is the third and fourth round replays, which basically means there's a free midweek to set up all the postponed games. So what we've done is we've added these fixtures into the fixture ticker as if they were confirmed. So big caveat here before we get into it that, these fixtures are not confirmed. For this, you see this column, which is the double game week second column, so the TBC. But let's say that it happens as per the predicted fixtures. So all the postponed ones go in there. We wanted to talk through who are the teams we should be looking at and also how does AFCON fit into it, what transfers we can look to do. So I'm not going to talk about the whole 20 teams and then debate it with you, Sonaldo. I think what we should do is let's look at this from a perspective of, number one, what comes across to me is Man United, Watford, potentially West Ham, and Tottenham are the 4 teams that, if they have that double, come across as teams that have a decent run up to game week 22 and as well have a good double. So first point that comes to me is, if you're looking to replace, let's say, a player that has COVID, let's say, without naming names unnecessarily, but let's say it's a Liverpool player and you want to take him out to get somebody in. I think Man United, Tottenham, West Ham, and Watford are the teams to look at. So what's your reaction there in terms of players to target and, any other teams that jump out in terms of the doubles?
Yeah, I think Man United, stand out especially well just because their lead up is also very good. And we will talk about it as we get into it, but I do know that Man United have good fixtures all the way up to game week 27, I believe. So even as long-term holds, they're pretty decent assets. And then, Spurs boys, obviously I want to jump on, especially Son, as soon as possible. And the likes of Ben Davis stand out to me because of his price point. Even Eric Dyer is a good option, I think. Reguilon, obviously, is a good one, but his price point can become sort of an issue. Besides that, King, I think he's going to be a very popular template pick. And for the game week 22, the West Ham boys as well, Bowen, Antonio, possibly a defensive asset in Kufal. So, those stand out. And once we get to the second chart, I think it'll be much better organized and it'll help the viewers.
We do a team by team in the next chart.
Yeah, so
I get it.
You let me know when you want to go to the next chart.
Yeah, okay. So first, let's stick on this one first. So if you've looked at some of the good teams, and by the way, Everton stand out here as well. And one of the traps that people always fall into, myself included, is we have these double game week blinkers, which basically means anyone that doesn't have a double game week is no go. And I think Everton being top of the ticker here, and by the way, they have good fixtures beyond 23 as well, is just a sign that if people wanted to say, look, we're going to take it game by game, we will see what information comes across. Well, there is new information that has come, which is DCL should be back. And whether he starts or not, the Boxing Day fixture, but Burnley away, Newcastle at home, Brighton at home, I mean, these are elite fixtures. Even the blank week, they play Norwich away. So it's completely viable if somebody said, look, I just wanted to get DCL, and if he doesn't have a double, so be it. And there is a possibility that they could have a double as well if things pan out their way in game week 21, but that is TBC. So I think one interesting word of caution there for Everton. For a team like Chelsea, so this is an interesting one, and I'm going to ask you what your plan is, because you have Alonso and James, right? We're hearing from Gerrard today that Villa are doing okay. I mean, they had an outbreak on Saturday. So there was actually a big concern that the Chelsea-Aston Villa game in game week 19 wouldn't happen. But the latest from Gerrard is that the team is fine. I think finally the Premier League has come up with a standard of if you have 13 players, you need to play. So that has helped. I think we'll see less postponements unless there's an outbreak basically a day or two before, which can happen. But I think for the moment, given what we know, Chelsea-Aston Villa should happen. Then they have Brighton, which is also a good game, Brighton at home. But after that, they have Liverpool at home, Man City away, potentially a double with Arsenal. This is the game that has been brought forward potentially if they go to the World Club Cup. And then they have Tottenham at home. And if things stay as they are, they have then 2 blanks coming in 24 and 25. So what's your plan, you think, for Alonso and James?
I'm going to move off both of them. I think I can definitely cover those missing assets. I think by 21, for sure, I'm going to move off Alonso. Reece James, if the time's right and I have enough, or if I don't have other burning holes to fill out, then I can definitely move Reece James on, because I have a game week 22 kind of template in mind, or team that I want to get to. So my plan is to move off both of them.
Okay. Interesting. So, I mean, there's people with Mount as well. And yeah, I think that's sensible. I would say if the game is going ahead, and so this is exactly where I was getting to at the beginning of the show in terms of we still have to keep the big picture in mind. Let's assume, for whatever reason, the Chelsea Villa game is called off and you're sitting there with a triple Chelsea. Then for me, even taking a hit to get them out for double game week players, like maybe getting a James and Mount to Son and Davis, is completely fine, because you're basically getting somebody who doesn't have a game for somebody who may have 4 in the next 3 weeks. So I hear you. I personally think, given that transfers are precious for people who are not wildcarding, and we'll come to obviously chip strategy later, I personally think I might keep James, because, Villa away is fine. Brighton is great. Liverpool is the only fixture where I would be apprehensive. But look, I would never bench a premium in that scenario anyway. And then the double Man City away and Arsenal at home. I mean, Arsenal is still fine. He still has a double game week. And given, what they're going through, I think in terms of injuries, I don't think James is droppable at all. So he'll just continue to play. Alonso is a different story for me. I mean, I personally sold him, so I don't want to be in that position if I have a double defense. But I can certainly see people coming down to at least one, if not none. And then we'll see. I mean, I would also say 24, 25 blanks are not set in stone. As we know, things are going ahead, but you just never know. People may just cancel the World Club Cup. So we just have to monitor that. But I hear you. I think Chelsea is one that is looking increasingly difficult to hold longer term. What do you think about City then? City have no double. And in fact, the double that they do have is potentially just Chelsea at home. So what do you think about Chelsea assets? City assets.
Yeah, actually, that was the point I was going to make, is that for sure I'm going to move off Alonso. Reece James is a tricky one because of the points you just mentioned. But one of the ideas for me is to move towards a City double up. I know that may not sound like maximizing the double game week in 22, but maximizing game week 22 does not necessarily mean you have 15 double game week players or good fixture players, for example. So one of the ideas for me is to move off the double Chelsea and move towards a double City defense. And part of that caveat, or part of that reason, is because I'm looking to move off City midfield assets in the likes of Foden. I know people may disagree with me here, but I have my reasons for it. I do think that City midfield points are extremely spread out. And in game week 14, I was on Scoutcast and mentioned this, that I think the points are going to be spread out. And since game week 14, the points have been extremely spread out. So I think I can get away with a City asset because my moves would be from Foden to Son, for example. And like for like, I think Son is a better asset, right? So if I do that, I want more City coverage, and that could be the double City defense. So a lot of food for thought here for me. But that also might not work because I might move towards a cheaper defensive line so that I can get the likes of Son and Ronaldo in. But we can talk about it as we go.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's just do a little bit of strategizing. So that's interesting. So a Foden to a Son kind of move is interesting. I mean, when would you look to do that? I mean, I've got at the bottom of this chart some potential transfers, right? I mean, and the way I was thinking was, for example, so a lot of people have Arsenal assets because of the last week blank to Watkins, Antonio's issues before. So people have Lacazette. Some people have ESR or Saka. So they obviously have Norwich in game week 19. But then after this, they have Wolves at home, which is fine, but Wolves are defensively pretty good. So it's not a definite hold for that. Then they have City. Then they have Tottenham away and possibly no double. So one of the thinkings was, for example, Lacazette out next week or potentially even Saka. The other one for Liverpool, you mentioned Son and Ronaldo. I think these two will be the most popular premium assets because thinking through the AFCON, which is from game week 22 to 23, you see that at the bottom here in the black. That's the period when you have the blank. So potentially Salah misses the double, even though Liverpool don't have a double, but it's a double game week and game week 23. And just before that, they play Chelsea. So it's a very interesting strategy of people who, people may decide to keep Salah if they have, value tied up, and pretty much everyone does because we all got him beginning of the season. But potentially for me, you don't want to have that much amount of funds held up, and you take advantage of having a Son and a Ronaldo for the double game weeks. So that's a potential window to take Salah out. I will certainly look to do that. And then for me, you mentioned Foden out. I think game week 22, I think he's very disposable because they play Chelsea at home. I don't think Cancelo is out potentially because he's a much longer term hold. But if people have recently jumped on Foden, Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, I think these guys can definitely go out in game week 22. So again, very, very early thoughts on how you can plan your transfers to get to this optimum game week 22 team. And for me, certainly, I think Son and Ronaldo would be the two premiums most people will go for, backed around other assets from Tottenham, United, Watford, potentially Burnley and others. So what are your thoughts on just a kind of premium transfers and other transfers within your team or in more general?
Yeah, I think the Salah question is, I'm pretty certain that, let's say he does go to AFCON and things pan out, then I'm pretty certain I'm going to move off Salah with the contingency of having a route back to him when he does return. So that's something that definitely we have to consider. But my ideal combination of premium asset for me right now is Son and Ronaldo. It can change, but I do believe that both are going to be great individual assets, and having them as a combination will be sort of a differential, hopefully, as well as template picks going into Game Week 22 and prior and beyond that. So I do think those are the two premiums that I'm looking to. I am going to keep TAA, I am going to keep Jota, and I'm going to keep Cancelo most likely. So already that's 5 spots that are very, very expensive.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are talking about Son and Ronaldo now, right? I mean, a lot of people have money or have held Ronaldo. Like myself, I can go Lacazette to Ronaldo this week. I won't do that, but I could. And a lot of people can go Foden up to Son, or basically have money tied up or money in the bank to go up to Son for any midfielder. And so the question a lot of people will debate is whether we go for Son first or Ronaldo first. But what I would say is it's basically you're just changing the timing, because you will get one now or next week, and the other one you will be funded by Salah. So it really depends on who you want to prioritize first. So Spurs obviously play Crystal Palace this week, whereas United play Newcastle. So I think clearly this week the better fixture is the Man United one. Having said that, Ronaldo, today was the first day Ronaldo was pictured back in training. Son is already in, and you can see him. He's in the rhythm. The negative for Son is he going to be playing up top every time? I mean, I don't know. Actually, we should get your thoughts on that. He played obviously in a 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2. And question is that something that is sustainable, or was it something specific for Liverpool? Because he looked absolutely amazing, as he does when he plays right up top. So what's your thoughts on Son versus Ronaldo in general, if somebody wanted to go early on one of them?
Yeah, it's a great question, because it's a hot debate right now, right? Do you go Son first? Do you go Ronaldo first? Eventually, I think a lot of us will have both of them. First things first, what we know about Son is he had a great game. He could have had a mega haul, and he's in form. He's scored the last 3 games against different diverse teams. Ronaldo, he's off a big break. Maybe, I think it's 2 games now, right? So we don't know. We don't know what we're going to get. And in the last game versus Norwich, we got not the best performance, to be honest, right? So for 2 million with unknown, I'd rather go Son first, because we know he's proving to have some form right now. You're right. They played the 3-5-2 for the first time, where Dele Alli played an excellent game. I thought he was my man of the match. And Ndombele was, giving those piercing passes to Kane, who finally scored after I sold him. So that was annoying. But he might revert back to the 3-4-3, right? And Lucas might come back in. Who knows, right? When the 3-4-3 is implemented, Liverpool with gegenpressing and pressing so high, it allows for Conte's counterattacking to thrive. But when teams sit back, such as Crystal Palace will probably sit back, he might go back to the 3-4-3, and you'll see Son play much more in defensive positions, not because Conte wants him to defend, but it's because there is no passes to him, so he'll come back to get the ball. Again, this might be basing too much on the pass, because what if this game Ndombele comes into play? What if this game Dele Alli plays again, and it's still a 3-4-3? Things may change. What I know for sure is that Spurs are finally showing signs of Conte ball, and it's very exciting for me. So I'm very excited to bring in Son for Foden most likely this week.
Right. That's That's bold. I mean, I'm a little bit skeptical on selling Foden still. Obviously, that's a whole other debate, and we won't get into it on.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I should clarify that, but it's something that I'm thinking about doing.
Right. By the way, I see a lot of panic on the chat on Bowen and Antonio. I would just say, look, there's nothing more than just a Twitter rumor right now. They have a game today, so Moyes will have a chance to speak. Apparently, Antonio could have COVID and Bowen just has a niggle, but we don't know yet. There's no point speculating on any of this because we're all holding transfers. Hopefully anyone on this listening to this or watching this has held their transfers and is not going to do essentially anything until Saturday. So just might as well wait. We will know more in the future, but there are some rumors and that's all we can say at the moment.
I think the deadline is Sunday, to clarify.
Correct. So we wait till Saturday, even Sunday morning. Sure.
Okay, so let's
go to the next slide then, Ronaldo.
Okay, so, again, this is great because Pras was able to kind of organize everything into double Gameweek 22. So this should help all the YouTube viewers sort of think about the great fixtures, the combination of great fixtures as well as players. Pras, do you want to sort of explain what you did here?
Yeah, look, I mean, this is just a summary, a visual. I like to do this, when I shared it with you, I do this anyway. Whenever there's a double coming up, I just want to make sure, and same for blanks, I want to make sure I'm not targeting the teams with a good blank only. I want to make sure that they have good fixtures leading up to it. And I would have done this as well with a little bit more time, that they should have good fixtures after that as well. So you're not just getting somebody just because they have 2 good fixtures and lose out on 3 other good fixtures for other teams. So the idea was to say, this is my rankings of teams that have a double or have good fixtures. Some have a double, some don't, but don't ignore the ones that don't, right? So that's the idea. Here for me, Watford is number 1 here because they have good fixtures leading up and they have a double and they could potentially have a double-double. And what does a double-double mean? It's basically they could have a double in 21 and a double in 22. As I mentioned in the beginning, the double in 21 is not confirmed at all. This is why in the previous slide, we didn't show that and the potential games there because there's two issues. Number 1, there's not enough time to announce it, especially if fans are traveling. Now, I am aware that in Scotland, for example, the fans have been banned from entering the stadium. So if there are no fans, then the games can be rescheduled at very short notice as well. So it is a potential. So we've simply added a column here to say that it is something that is possible. Mm-hmm. So Watford, Man United, Spurs are again 3 teams that come out as teams that can be targeted. I think Burnley is an interesting one as well because they could have a double-double and their fixtures are fine. I mean, Burnley are cheap assets that can be targeted, especially in their defense, even though I'm not a big fan of their defense and how they've done this year compared to years past. Then you have Leicester. Leicester decent in terms of what they've got coming up. I think definitely a Maddison or a Barnes type of punt looks interesting. Yep. So what we should do, Sonaldo, in this one is just to help the listeners. Let's talk about some of these teams and some of the players that you would target. Now, when we say players to target, doesn't mean we're looking at all of them. It's more we're trying to narrow down the universe of players to look at. Some of them you already could own. So for example, already you see under West Ham, you see Bowen and Antonio are the first 2 names under these guys because great fixtures, they will have a double and their double looks very tasty. Mm-hmm. I would, for example, if Antonio had COVID, I wouldn't jump to sell him. I would first try to see what is the timeline. Something for non-UK listeners as well is this morning, actually, they've changed the regulations on what is the isolation period after somebody tests positive. It used to be 10 days that pretty much wiped out 2 game weeks for most people. Now it's 7 days. So even if, let's say, this Antonio news turns out to be true and he tested positive on Monday, he would basically just miss 1 game. So have that in mind. And the players to target here in the column are both ones that you should keep, but also ones that you can look to get. And for me, these players all merit future thinking. So you don't have to be looking at Game Week 19 in isolation. If you're taking a hit, I mentioned this before, if you're taking a hit, let's say, for example, to remove Antonio, if he is something more serious, then getting somebody like a Broha who has a double, is a viable strategy if you can upgrade somebody else to a Son, for example. So why don't we take these teams one by one, Sonaldo, and then just talk about some of the players that people can think about to get in as they target the double game week 22.
Sure. So what should we start with Watford?
Yeah, well, I struggled with Watford to find anyone other than King or maybe Backman, but we don't know the timeline on Foster, right? So who do you think we get instead of, or in addition to King? Because let's remember the AFCON timing is game week 20 to 23. You don't want to be getting a Dennis or holding on to a Dennis even. So who else from Watford do you think we can get?
I mean, I think we can safely assume that Dennis has gone to the AFCON. I think the only options is King or Backman as a second playing keeper option if you're going to look to bench boost in 22. What I did notice is after looking at long-term fixtures for Watford actually have decent fixtures all the way till game week 30. So maybe after, you're in no rush to sell it, but as a King owner, I'm perfectly happy just having King. How about you?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I would have loved to get more because Watford's double could be Newcastle away, Crystal Palace at home, and then in game week 23. So again, important to remember the big picture of what happens before and after. They play Norwich in game week 23. So Watford is actually a great option for those that don't have King. He's definitely one that you should be targeting. I would just be wary on Backman. Like I said, I don't know what Foster's timing is.
Yeah, someone mentioned Sarr. The reason I wouldn't go to Sarr is because there's so many midfield options right now. I just don't see him, fitting into my
Sarr
team.
is off to AFCON too, no?
I don't think so. I think he might be coming back from injury still.
I mean, he is injured.
Yeah.
But okay. Sarr is set to miss African Cup of Nations with Senegal. Okay, that was the last news in November, though. But yeah, I mean, if he's back, if he's fit, then he'll go to AFCON. If he's not, then he just won't play, right? I mean, I don't know, but he's a complete unknown. I wouldn't go near Sarr for now anyway.
Yeah, Man United.
We talked about Ronaldo. We've talked about Dalot. Now, a word of caution on Dalot. He has not been spotted in training. Obviously, classic that I got him on a hit, and he has not played since. He has not been spotted in training, so we don't know what's wrong or why he hasn't been training. But that's just the reality. I'm struggling to find anybody other than Ronaldo, Dalot, and De Gea as players to target, because the problem is, if you think about a Rashford, he could probably share minutes with a Greenwood if it's a double game week. Sancho has looked a little off. He wasn't spotted in training yesterday as well. Who else would you go? Maybe Telles, people are talking about as a good option, but we've just not seen enough with Ralph, right? So we don't know how much he's valuing Telles over Shaw. Was it more just that Shaw was rusty and not fit enough for Ralph, and now he will be back in the fold? Same with Wan-Bissaka, by the way. We just don't know now that they've had a break for 2 weeks. We don't know what the team comes back with. So I would say with Man United right now, I think even though it's Newcastle, it's one to watch, and then you see who you want to target. I think definitely long-term Ronaldo, yes, but the second and third are open.
Yeah, I think we're going to learn a lot more about United in the next 2-3 game weeks, hopefully. So I wouldn't rush to move into Man United assets unless it's Ronaldo or De Gea. I do think Telles is a interesting, fun option. That the set pieces is really what entices me about Telles. I think he could be a fun sort of differential and a double up in the United defense. However, as you said, Luke Shaw is lingering and lurking in the background, so we just don't know what that rotation is going to be like. In terms of Dalot, I think he's nailed. I think that it's his spot to lose, if anything. I think there's the potential that Rangnick goes back to or plays a 3-back at times. So in that case, Wan-Bissaka is a better option than Dalot, or he might play both of them. So who knows? But I think Dalot is much more nailed than the left side in Telles and Luke Shaw. So one to watch.
And one comment on the chat. I think it's fair comment. I'm trying to see who this is. I can't find it. But anyway, Mark O'Leary. Ronaldo could very well share minutes as well. So there's nothing saying that Ronaldo is going to play every minute. I think it's pretty likely that he will either get early subs or even may miss a double game week. So not to scaremonger anyone, but it is Ronaldo. He's 37. He may not play all the time, but given the evidence we've seen so far, he's looked very fit. All the things we talked about in the previous videos, he was pressing even until the 90th minute. There's no reason to just assume that he'll miss it. But yes, his minutes could be a risk for sure.
And we forgot to shout out Fred because FPL Bruno called it, and I think Fred is also a decent option. What's his price point now? 5 something, right? So maybe.
I think 4.9 to 5. I forget now.
I think, Pras, it's important to also mention that there is a 13-day break from game week 21 to 22 doubles. So that is quite a long time. So something to consider because a lot might happen during that 13-day.
Correct. When we
break.
talk about chip strategy, that's a very important point that you've made. So yes, definitely let's discuss that. Moving to Spurs, I think Spurs is the one that is the most interesting right now, to be honest, because of how they looked against Liverpool, the fact that they have so many doubles coming up. I don't think we need to talk about Son anymore. You mentioned all the good stuff. The only word of caution, like I said, is to watch whether they persist with the 2 up top or not. I hope for Son he does because they looked much better. Ali is very interesting. I liked, as you said, he was probably man of the match against Liverpool. Looked good, but I was speaking to some Spurs fans and they were like, look, guys, we've been here before with Ali. Even when Mourinho just started, he comes up with some performances where everybody says, okay, he's now back, but turns out after a game or two, he's not. So be very careful with going for Ali. I would personally give him at least another couple of games to see if this really sticks.
But I'm going to argue against that real quick because
tell me.
The 2 points that I saw in Delhi that really, really was exciting was I've never seen him do this much defensive work in a long, long time. I mean, he was working in the defense in that left center mid role. So, that's the Conte effect. And number 2, listen, again, we're not jumping on Dele Alli right now. We need to watch out, right? But the second point is Conte brings players from the dead back to life. Off the top of my head, Moses, for example, right? So they have, Dele Alli has that potential, I think, and I'm very excited to watch him kind of maybe revive. But go on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just think it's one to watch. I wouldn't jump on Ali now, is my point. But if we're talking about the double itself, and if we're crystal gazing, I can see Ali being very popular if he holds on to his spot and continues. I mean, he had that glorious chance against Liverpool as well. I mean, he scores that goal, a lot more people will be talking about.
On target too. On target.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about the defense. I mean, I'm purposefully not talking about Kane now because the issue is we've talked about Kane. Kane looked very good. But the issue is, would you rather have a Kane and a Rashford versus a Son and a Ronaldo? And the answer is Son and a Ronaldo. I think there's general agreement on that. If you're brave and you think that Spurs are that much better than United and didn't want to spread out the risk, Seb talked about yesterday on the Scoutcast. I mean, there's a tendency to diversify where you think that if it's only a 1-0, in one of the games, I want one player from that game, not Son and Kane. So if you wanted Son and Kane, I think there's nothing wrong with it. But then you're saying, I don't want Ronaldo or I don't want an option from Manchester United. That's perfectly fine. But I think that's a separate discussion on strategy and eggs in basket or whatever. So I think moving on from that is then the more interesting discussion is on defense, on Reguilon, Davis, Dyer. What do you think about those guys?
Yeah, I mean, quick word on Kane. Kane had a lot of chances, so he may become a very good, viable option. But as you mentioned, we don't know where to go with Man United attacking assets. So that is the big deciding factor for me in going United and Son. I think the defense is where I'm very interested in, and I think a key differential could be the double up on the Spurs defense because they may have the double-double, the potential of a double-double. 2 great fixtures in Game Week 22, good fixtures leading up to it, and some cheap enabling options in Davis, who I think is an outstanding option, right? Yes, if Sessegnon plays, he's a better option because he's able to cut into the central areas and the opposition penalty box. But even when Reguilon plays, Davis is not a bad option at 4.4. Dyer, I'm not sure. I think you're banking on clean sheets. But again, his price point is pretty decent. So maybe optimally you go for the left side because Spurs do attack a lot more from the left side. If you look at the heat maps over the last couple of game weeks, Royale, who's the guy? Tanganga and the guys who played on the right, they don't really push up. They're kind of very sitting back deeper. Whereas the left-sided guys, their heat maps is insane. They're like a Rudiger type of heat map. So maybe you can go for the Davis-Reguilon combination. And that combination of an effective ownership is got to be super low. Could be a very, very good differential combo.
Yep, I hear you. I mean, a word on Dyer, by the way. He's all the words around him, from fans, from the way, from a tactical perspective. He's basically the guy spraying the passes, right, from defense up to the wing backs, or even potentially up to Kane. So he is very involved. He's going to be pivotal in the team. But I do agree with you, other than maybe the occasional free kick or a potential assist, the more attacking threat lies with Davis, who basically does tend to overlap. Your point on Sessegnon, I think Sessegnon is now injured for a couple of weeks again. Poor guy. Yep. So I think, look, Reguilon, I think, is, for me, if budget was not a problem, is the best second option. So let's assume we're saying no to Kane because we're going Ronaldo. Son is the first option. For me, Reguilon is the second, and probably Davis the third, or Ali the third. Is that fair?
Perfect. Yep.
Yeah.
But
all right.
I would put Davis too because of the price difference. So
yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. Of course, we can't, we're not on a wild card. So we're kind of, budget often becomes the bigger question than anything else. But I think we're on the same page. West Ham, I don't want to talk about because I'm really sad. But anyway, I think we all know Bowen and Antonio are the two options, despite what Antonio has done or has hurt people. Assuming he's out, and then assuming he's back, he's still a good option for the doubles. So as much as it hurts owners of Antonio to hear this, but you don't have to sell him if he is out, because if he's back in game week 20, then you have 21, 22 as options. And their double is absolutely fantastic if it happens. I mean, a double of Leeds at home and Norwich at home. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. So please, you don't have to sell Antonio, especially at a time when we all have very big benches because of what we've gone through. People don't really own a useless fifth defender, or, like me, for example, I have Brownhill, but I'm looking to upgrade him soon. So if you don't have to sell people, you can actually just ride out. And the advantage is, once the person's had COVID, hopefully for the next few weeks, they don't have it again. So I am potentially looking to hold both Bowen and Antonio despite any injury news, unless, of course, anything is long term. But in defense is the interesting one. Are you looking at anybody in defense from West Ham?
What's the status on Ben Johnson? Have you heard anything?
No, yeah. I mean, he's just still out, but we'll get more today. But I think that whole wing back position is now very dicey with Soufal, Johnson, Masuaku. I mean, Cresswell, but for his price, that's the only one. Diop is super cheap, but I think that's it, right?
And also, their central defenders are all like, I think Zuma's injured. I think it's a crazy injury list there. So that definitely weakens them as a defensive team as well, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I would go there. All of this is good stuff that we're talking about, because we're seeing, great fixtures for Watford, United, Spurs, West Ham, the double ups, but we don't have a plethora of options to go for each team. So it'll really kind of be a good basis for the chip strategy moving forward, because optimally you need more than 3 options from each team, because we only have 4 teams with great double game week fixtures to really fill out, for example, a prime, game week 22 type of wildcard team, for example. Yeah. I mean, it brings us nicely to our next one, which is Palace. I'm very interested in Palace as well, because they played Spurs away this week. So of course, that can be a tough game. But after that, Norwich at home, West Ham at home, and then they have a double potentially of Brighton and Watford away, but still. So I think Brighton and Watford away are both great fixtures. We've seen in the last couple of weeks that Hughes is more
of an established position, which basically means Gallagher is your number 10. So I think that's really, really nice. People have come off Gallagher last week because of obviously the blank, but I am looking to target him potentially. I mean, people have Guaita. I put Mitchell in there as well. I mean, simply speaking, Crystal Palace's defense is elite. Despite the fact that they keep letting in a goal, they're in the top three for XG conceded in the season, and that's a lot. It's definitely one to target if you wanted to get to. And for people looking to bench boost, we'll come to chip strategies. I think looking at a second keeper, whether that's Guaita or Sanchez, are actually very shrewd picks as a second keeper. But that's all I had to say on Palace.
Yeah, that's enough for me. I think Gallagher is the option that I want.
Okay, so we're not going to go through all these guys because we've talked about Chelsea. We've talked about... Let me pick a couple of other interesting ones. So Villa, let's talk about Villa and let's talk about Leicester. So let's do Villa first, because the thing is, a lot of people jumped on Watkins the midweek after last, and then obviously they had the postponement. Now, many people got Watkins in and then were burnt because of the late postponement. And by the way, not to begrudge anybody who did that. It's fine. People have lives. Nobody sits around Twitter till 1 hour before the deadline. So if you were one of those, absolutely fine. It's a lesson. If you can, try to wait until the deadline, but life does come in the way, especially during this time of the year. So absolutely okay. But fact of the matter is, people are sitting with Cash and Watkins at this stage. So my question to you would be, what do you do with Villa assets going forward?
I think if you have him, this is tricky. I think if you have him, you keep him. But again, this is so team dependent, because for me to get sort of the team that I'm thinking of in game week 22, I may move off that 7-8 million bracket in terms of striker options and go for like a Broha, King, Ronaldo to create funds elsewhere. So I think it's more of a money type of thing. So I'm not sure, as someone that, simply put is this: I brought in Watkins, I got my double-digit return, and I'm going to maybe run off that, right? Maybe I'm happy off that. So I hear you. I have other things that I need, other assets that I want, and I just don't know when I would fit him in, unless I wildcard in 21 and decide to somehow fit him in.
Okay. Well, look, my perspective is this: if this week you're holding on to Watkins and Cash or whoever else you have from Villa, this is the week they play Chelsea, right? After that, they play Leeds. You definitely want them. They play Brentford. Fine to have them as well. And then they potentially have a double, both home games, United and Burnley. So actually, they're fine. And I would think that if somebody was wildcarding, let's see, game week 20, you could get a Watkins. It's absolutely fine. I would go as far as to say that if you were wildcarding in 20, I would get Cash for sure. Because Leeds away, Brentford away, Man United home, Burnley home in the next 3 is actually fine. And a double game week, which is always a great position to be in. In double game weeks, always watching how if somebody has 2 away games, there is obviously more potential for rotation than 2 home games. Just something during this time of the year. So if Villa's both the home games, both doubles are home games, I'm very interested. So despite having sold Watkins and not having Cash, it's a position you can target later.
Yeah, and Frost Spolter just commented that Watkins has good fixtures from 26 to 24 to 26, as well as 28. So that's good information here. And plus, Pras, so I'm sure you're going to share this chart you made on Twitter afterwards. But quick question to you: did you put game or away and home games into consideration as well when you were thinking about great, okay, and bad fixtures?
Not really. I mean, look, it's when it's just 3 subjective words, then it's hard to do that. I mean, if in another world I would rate them out of 5 and do whatever, but I think, look, people need to just have a look at these doubles. Firstly, the doubles aren't confirmed yet. Once they are, definitely I would put more weight on 2 home games than potentially 2 easier games, but both away. It's very subjective.
Yeah, and it looks like the doubles will be confirmed before the deadline this week from a little bit of what I've been reading on Twitter. So hopefully it does get confirmed.
So if what we should have confirmed that if there are doubles in 21, they should be confirmed before the deadline. I don't think we'll know the 22 doubles before the deadline. I could be wrong, but there is still a lot of time for game week 22. If you look at Lego Mane's spreadsheet, we don't have it here, but there's a big gap between 21 and 22. There's actually the FA Cup 4th round. So we may not know about game week 22, at least not before this deadline.
Okay, so I think
we did so Leicester was the last team. Sorry, Sonaldo. Right. Leicester. What do you think about Leicester?
Madison. I think I'm interested in I've seen some drafts because I've have these, I guess, WhatsApp groups with friends, and some people are even considering Vardy. I'm not sure about that, but what do you think about Madison?
Madison, Barnes are both interesting. My problem is that there is no room in the midfield, like you talked about, for other options as well. I think if you have Son in there, if you have Jota in there, which people will just tend to keep for AFCON, it's just difficult to get. Even if you sell a City asset, I would, for example, rather have a Gallagher than a Maddison, even though Maddison is potentially more explosive, but Gallagher has potentially better fixtures leading up to the double. So that also comes into the consideration. But I'm with you. It's not hugely exciting, even though Leicester could be one of the teams that have a double-double. I think if they have a double-double, people will find a way to get somebody.
Very tricky price point, Maddison.
Yeah. We shall see. All right. What else? Do I see anything else here worth talking? I think we're done. The bottom of this chart, I think, worth another couple of minutes. This is especially for people who, if you don't want to fall into this double game week trap, fixtures leading up to the double and a single game week 22. So people who could be wildcarding, people who are looking at a bench boost. Don't forget about assets from Liverpool. We are going to be in a very interesting position where you have a lot of these Salah funds that can go anywhere. But I think you definitely should be keeping Jota, Trent. These are players that can do well, even in that single game week where they play. Who does Liverpool play? Brentford at home. So Brentford at home could be better than any average player having a double game week. So holding on to your Liverpool players, maybe even targeting an Everton player like a DCL, completely okay shouts. Newcastle was somebody who stood out. They're struggling, right? I'm not proposing anyone to go and buy Newcastle assets, but let's say if you have Wilson, he plays United at home this week, then Everton away, Southampton away, Watford at home. So the single game week 22 would be Watford at home. Absolutely fine to keep him if you wanted to. So just some things to keep in mind, that it's not just about the doubles in 22. And we talked about City already. I think selling Foden eventually or any other City midfielder is fine. Selling Cancelo, probably not. That's at least the position that we have.
Yeah, Newcastle fixture is not too bad at all.
So, shall we move to the chip strategy?
Yes, we will. So we are going to go through all the chips and the possibility, kind of the pros and cons, but more of a talk through all the chips and strategies moving forward. So the first one is the triple captain chip. Why don't you start with this, Pras?
So, before we get into each of the chip strategies, right? This is the time of the season where a single piece of advice just doesn't work for everyone, because everyone's team is set up differently, and subtle differences make a big difference. So, or have a big impact. So if you have, for example, Livramento, and you've held on to Livramento this whole time, and now he has a nice double coming up, then suddenly you're better placed than other managers to bench boost, potentially. If you have two dead spots, for whatever reason you ended up having Locadia and Brownhill, then you're probably not as well set up for a bench boost. So you need to be thinking about other strategies. If you're one of those managers, we all hate you if you do, but if you still have a wild card left, then it's a completely different strategy. So we'll talk about all of these things once we get to it. So you started with triple captain. So my view on triple captain is as follows. While the fixtures are decent for Spurs, United, and potentially West Ham, I would just back, given what we've seen this season, there are three teams that are better than anybody else, which is City, Liverpool, and Chelsea. So I would not put my triple captain on anyone other than a player from that team.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be very specific, I would not put my triple captain outside of anyone other than Salah. Maybe Trent, if it was a completely, if Salah was off form, let's say in game week 36, and I wanted to target the Liverpool fixtures, maybe Trent. So outside of Salah, Trent, maybe in City, Cancelo. I'm not looking to triple captain anybody else. And all these guys don't have a double this week. So for me, triple captain isn't really an option. What do you think?
No, I think this is a very simple chip. I mean, the reason I put it first is because triple captain, free hit, and not using any chips, I think is very simple. For example, it's the opportunity cost here, right? And as you mentioned, you want to be putting a triple captain chip on the guy that we can trust the most, which is Salah, from the teams that we can trust the most, which is Liverpool or Man City, and both of them don't have a double game week. So I'm going to make a bold claim here. If you look at the previous, every season, right, there's always going to be a blank 27, 30-ish. And if that's the case, I'm going to assume that Salah is going to have a double game week down the line. Bold claim here,
Yep.
but I'm pretty confident that that's going to happen. So I think it's a wait and hold the triple captainship because there's no outstanding, option here unless you're willing to take the punt on, let's say, a Son or Ronaldo.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. Look, Son could gain some bandwagon. The thing with triple captain is no planning
Don't
is
say
needed.
that.
Get the players in that you're going to target anyway for the double, and then you see what you feel. I mean, unlike the wild card, you don't need to do it a week before. You just plan the triple captain when you can, but I don't see it yet, and I think you're on the same page.
Yeah, I think we can move on to the next
Free
one.
hit, go on. You go first on the free hit.
Okay, so what do we have here? Free hit. Free hit is an interesting one. I think it's going to become a very popular option. As you mentioned, Pras, a lot of these chip strategies, you cannot base off one piece of advice from anybody. It's really team dependent, and you kind of have to assess which chip or non-using chip is going to benefit you the most. So essentially, the free hit is the same as a triple captain chip because instead of planning for one player, you're planning for a starting 11. Depending on the information you have the option of doubling up on interesting options such as the West Ham double up defense or Man United double up defense, Spurs double up defense. One thing I did was come 22, what are the template, let's say, double game week players we're going to have? We assumed as earlier, Son, Ronaldo, De Gea, maybe Dalot, to name a few. So I did look up some, EO combinations right now and, very surface level stuff. But, Son and Kane combo right now is 0.02% in the top 10K. Again, this is going to change in the next 3-4 game weeks. Antonio Bowen combination is a measly 11%. And Reguilon and Davis combination is 0.06%. So as I mentioned, the double Spurs may become an uber differential as we move on. It's exciting, the free hit chip, whether you use it in 21 or 22, because it's guilt-free. You can just go all out, right? It doesn't disrupt your plan A. A lot of managers have a plan A for the season. So I guess you have to ask yourself as a manager is if this double game week didn't exist, what would you do? And I think the answer would be we would look further than just these game weeks and look into maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 game weeks down the line. The cons, managers are, looking at two key events here. Chelsea Club World Cup, as well as confirmed blanks in 27 and 30. These blanks, as I mentioned, happen every season. So in 27, the League Cup clashes with the PL. So there's going to be 2 games that will be postponed as a result. And usually one of the strong teams reach the League Cup final. This means a double in 31 or 32 likely. Game week 30, the FA Cup quarterfinals clash with the PL or Premier League. This happens every season. This is usually where we play the free hit chip because it's the same thing. Who reaches the FA Cup quarterfinals? Last season, we had 6 Premier League sides, and most of them are strong teams. So many postponed games are going to come our way eventually. This is, again, where I would use the free hit chip. So if you look at the free hit here, we don't know if we're going to be able to use the free hit in 27 or 30. I think 30 is a better one because there's going to be more than 2 games postponed in game week 27. I don't know if you followed my logic here, but basically opportunity cost again. The free hit chip will become very powerful down the line. Does not mean that's the more better option, but it's just my thinking at this point in time. Thoughts, Pras?
Yeah. Look, I think free hit chip is the most powerful chip in the game. And the value of the free hit chip is not the game week where it's played, it's the game weeks around it. So the reason why game week 30 is a popular, or 29, whenever the blanks happen, is a popular week is because that's the week when you have the FA Cup quarterfinals. And so usually what that means is the good teams all blank. So the good teams will make it to the FA Cup quarterfinal. And what you have is a game week 29-30 with without offending people's fans, but Newcastle, Watford, all these teams playing, and maybe a couple of upsets, and so a couple of the top 6 teams playing as well. So what you want to do is basically not ruin your whole structure, so you almost free hit into this other extremely different team, and then you come back to your original team. That for me is the beauty of the free hit chip. The issue I see in this week is who are the players who you want to kind of switch out of only for 1 week. I don't see anyone, because Salah, you can sell a week before and you just don't need to get him for the next 3 weeks. So it's not a 1 week play of removing Salah. If Salah was off for AFCON in the exact 2 weeks, then you have the double. Beautiful. You play the free hit, get Salah out. He doesn't even need to leave your team. But do you really want to free hit out in the week when Salah's already away? You might as well sell him. Same for Chelsea defenders, or if you have Mount, for example. If it was the World Club Cup was game week 22, you could just say, look, I want no Chelsea during this double. I would move that money from Chelsea into Reguilon. I would move that money into maybe a Folding Sun. But what you don't want is you free hit them out, and then you're stuck in game week 23 again with the Chelsea defenders, and then they blank again in 24-25. So for me, the viability of the free hit chip is lost because of the Salah and the Chelsea defenders that work around this free hit. So yes, you can make massive gains on a free hit, like you mentioned with the EO point, that you can actually target these players and cumulatively make a lot of points against the average. But you have to not compare the free hit against what others will do. You have to compare what gain you will make on the free hit in this week versus what gain you can make in another week. So that's the way to think about the free hit chip. Me personally, I mean, if we're talking about future long-term strategy, and we've already scared off people by talking about game week 22 while we're sitting in game week 19. Let me talk about game week 30 and 36 now. So the way you can play potentially, and the way I have typically played in the last 2 years, is you can have a free hit strategy in 2 ways. Number one, you can play the free hit in game week 30, like we mentioned, the blank game week. Or like I have done in the last 2 years, is you actually dead end your team to the game week 30 team, you wildcard in 31, and then you free hit in 36. So without confusing people, there are lots of ways to play the free hit in the future. You don't have to play it now. Just because we have a big double now doesn't mean that anything has changed in terms of the doubles in the future. Those all will still happen based on what we know today. So it's perfectly fine to wait on the free hit as well. But if you see value, if you have a team where you definitely see that value of playing the free hit, I think you'll make big gains as well.
I last season free hit it in the blank game week, and I think it worked for me because, as you mentioned, you can, I guess, free hit in a double game week, but just because you're getting more points doesn't mean you're gaining more rank against the field. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? But in a smaller game week, if you're able to, if generally the points are going to be low for everybody, and you're able to free hit into a team of City and Chelsea or Liverpool assets at that time, I think it's going to be a much more powerful chip to use, as you mentioned.
Oh wait, we've seen the chat, and I see it now on Twitter as well. There's an extra free hit that everyone will receive from Game Week 20. Man, what a time to be doing the video! Excellent.
What? No way. Really?
So now free hit is on the table, right? I mean, what I would say is, obviously we're reacting to the news, but what I would say is, let's remember the point that, again, free hit has to be used as something that helps you before and after the game week. Don't just say, I'm going to kind of use the free hit as something for this double game week only. You don't have to. What you can do is plan your team around it so that in that particular week, you can go for the free hit. But on the other weeks, you're still well set up. So great news. I think FPL has done everyone a favor, but I'm actually not sure, just looking into it, that still this is the week to free hit.
Holy crap. Does this mean that we need to use the first free hit before the second half of the season? Or I'm sure it carries on, right?
You can run with 2.
Amazing. Wow, what a time to be doing the stream, Pras.
Yep. I mean, we could have, maybe in the next week we'll come up with a free hit team for game week 22. But I still think the points around selling Salah, getting back Chelsea assets isn't ideal. So is it an ideal time to free hit game week 22? Maybe not. Let's keep going with the other chips. Maybe everyone lands on the free hit anyway. But I think there's a couple of very viable other options, like wildcarding game week 21 and then using a bench boost in 22. Let's talk about those as well.
Yeah. So, by the way, I can see a little bit of a smile in your face, Pras. So,
I'm not going to free hit. I mean, it's just more planning, right? More chaos.
Yeah.
Every engaged manager should love more chaos. And so, yeah, always a good thing to get more tools in your arsenal to make a difference.
And guys, thank you again for joining us today. The chat is absolutely on fire right now. I'm loving some of these comments. James C says, "What a time to be alive," and I do agree with you, James. So, yeah, let's do it. Wow, second free hit, baby. Let's go. Okay, so the third strategy was no chips, and we just don't use chips. But this one is now an interesting one with another chip in our cards. The idea is to build towards the best starting 11 by game week 22, and we have 4 free transfers essentially in 19, 20, 21, and 22 to get there. So this is a very interesting one because this applies to every other chip strategy. Essentially, you want to be building towards a game week 22 team by doing this one free transfer at a time. And maybe you kind of get to a point where you don't need to use the chips, right? So that's kind of the basic thinking I'm thinking about this, but let me know what you think, Pras.
So look, the best 11, I mean, potentially this is where most people will be going, right? I mean, if you don't have a wildcard 1, you don't want to use your wildcard 2 too early. I think building your best 11, so have a think about game week 22, find the players that you want to target, whether that's King, Son, Ronaldo, Dalot, Reguilon, and just basically focus on getting that best 11 using your transfers so that you're not looking to upgrade a Locadia to a Ronaldo and things like that. I mean, you can only focus on the 11, and I think that is a much easier play because frankly, we don't have enough time between now and game week 22, right? I mean, one of the things we'll talk about as the next chip strategies is to build for a bench boost without a wild card. That's the biggest issue, that you just can't do that so easily because of having only 2 or 3 transfers to plan for it.
Yep, I do agree. Hold on. Yeah, and just to kind of mention this because I did look at the longer run of fixture tickers. The second free hit is going crazy right now, but if you look at the longer run of fixtures, as we mentioned, Spurs, United, West Ham, and Watford have great double game weeks. All of them have solid game weeks till game week 27. So Spurs have solid till game week 28. Granted, they play Chelsea and City in 23 and 28. United have solid fixtures till 27. West Ham till 27, and Watford all the way to game week 30. So, again, a viable strategy, in my opinion, to really hold on to the chips, navigate your way through, and kind of this is defense mode, right? You're just kind of navigating without looking for too much upside, and hopefully not a red arrow, and sort of really attacking the latter part of the season where it really matters. So, interesting strategy. Should we move on to what I'm very excited about, option 4 and 5?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay. So option 4 is transferring, bench boosting game week 22, and wildcarding out of game week 22. So in 23, you're wildcarding essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Let me talk about this one because this is something that I was debating doing. So the idea here would be that from now until game week 22, you would basically use all the Salah money, spread it around your squad. So get a second keeper if you don't have one, upgrade your Locardias and your Brownhills, use all the Salah money and go nuts, right? And what that does is it gives you a very good bench boost squad because for the one time in the game you don't have Salah, you don't have to have Salah, you can actually use the money and spread it around. So that was the idea. And you could obviously do it with free transfers, but the problem is that you would then have your money spread around so badly that it would be hard to get Salah back, or your squad would be spread too thin. So the option here would be that you use the transfers to spread the money. And then in game week 23, let's say maybe after the Chelsea guys are back as well, you get everybody back. You bring your squad together in game week 24, potentially, once Chelsea are back from the World Club Cup. And then you wildcard, get Salah back, get your double, triple Chelsea if you want, get your City guys back. And that basically puts you ahead of everyone else, not only in terms of you've used your bench boost, and then you have the wildcard to kind of then attack the future fixtures. And now with 2 free hits, you don't have to worry about the blank in 30 because you use the free hit for the blank and you use the other free hit for game week 36. This was the strategy that I have been thinking about the most personally.
Wow. Okay.
Whether I need to wildcard out or not is a separate thing. But for me, this is the most viable one because of the fact that it'll be the only time when you'll have a Salah-less double game week, probably. And when you have a Salah-less double game week, it means you have a lot of money to spread around your squad. So that's basically the thinking here.
I think that this is a very utopian scenario. I mean, I think you have to, have made some lucky transfers. I don't know if lucky is the right word, but the right transfers to have enough pieces to move into a, non-wildcard bench boost team by game week 22, which is possible because, again, we just don't know what the optimal bench is. Just because they have a double game week and they're a better player does not mean you're going to get more points. And this is where I want to mention the Lookman effect. I know this is a little bit confusing, but last season Lookman kind of did nothing all season. He had a penalty against Fabianski where he's not actually a penalty taker. First penalty, didn't even side netted, hit it hard. He Panenka'd it, if you remember, and it was just a soft, terrible penalty. And he goes into the double game week and has 8 points for his price point at 5, which is excellent, right? So the point of that is this kind of gives you an opportunity to take more punts, I think, because of the fact that you can wildcard out of it. So guys like Dele Alli come into play. Who am I thinking of? Anyway, so more differential punts can be taken. However, I think this is a very exciting strategy if you can do it. But I don't think I have the team to be able to get a decent bench because I also have to replace my keeper in order to.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at it. I mean, obviously, we're trying to have generic advice here, not for our particular teams. But if let's say if I take my team for example, I have James, Cancelo, Trent, Dalot, and Davis. All these 5 are fine on the bench boost because James and Cancelo don't double, but they're fine to keep. The other 3 have double game weeks. I have Jota, who's fine to keep. I have money to go Son, Ronaldo instead of Salah and Lacazette. I can upgrade my 5th Brownhill to a Gallagher, and I have 15 playing players, obviously, and the second keeper. So my next 4 transfers, if I use them on Salah, Lacazette, Gallagher, or Brownhill to Gallagher, and the 4th keeper, I have a 15 playing squad with just 3 single game weekers, which are, Liverpool and Chelsea, who I wasn't going to bench anyway. So it's a thought. Obviously, given COVID, things can happen and change anytime. For example, the Antonio news, maybe I need to spend a transfer there. But if everything was the same, I like this strategy a lot because you want to be wildcarding out of the bench boost, not in the bench boost, because what the bench boost does is it spreads your money too much. That's my issue with it. And usually why I save my bench boost till game week 36 in past seasons, because you don't want to be stuck with that big bench for the whole season, because not only will you be spending transfers getting them out, because in 3 weeks, suddenly when James is an option again, or Chilwell is fit and we're going big at the back again, you'll again be downgrading your Gallagher to Brownhill so that you can afford the Chilwell as your fourth premium defender. So essentially, you're basically taking a hit to get them in, hit to get them out. So you lose the whole point of the bench boost. So if there is a wildcard out strategy, and this is not something I've seen much on Twitter or anywhere else, for me, that is viable if you can get to it. Like you said, some teams are just so far away from a potential bench boost in 22 that they can't consider it.
Yeah, I think that's well covered, and it sounds like you're very interested in this option, Pras.
I will see. I mean, every day is a different day. Every day we get new news. We didn't know we had a free hit yet. I mean, suddenly with the second free hit news, I'm very, very interested in an earlier wildcard because if you can get bench boost out of the way, wildcard out, then you have 2 free hits to take care of the blanks and doubles later. I like it a lot. I mean, I'm obviously making this up as I'm seeing the second free hit news, but as I think about it, I think that's a very viable strategy.
So let's go to probably our last one before the first wildcard owners who are, kind of laughing all the way to the points bank right now. But this is the one that is enticing me the most. Wildcard in 21 and bench boost in 22. Again, 13 days between the 2 game weeks. But I'm very, very interested in doing this because my team, again, team dependent, my team is very far away from bench boosting in game week 22 because I don't have any Spurs, Man United assets. So for this one, I'll sort of start with the negatives because the positives are obvious. You must own these players after you get bench boost in game week 23, as you said. And you just mentioned, Pras, that you want to bench boost out of a wildcard out of a bench boost. If you look at this strategy, picking 15 players is quite difficult because assuming if you triple up on the prime double game week assets or teams, you need 3 players from each, and there's only essentially 4 teams that we identified. So the 5th is going to need some serious faith. This is excluding the fact that we're considering Trent, Jota, and the Cancelo, for example. So the challenge will be to pick the rest of the 3, but I think picking the first 12 will be very easy. So now I'm going to go into game theory a little bit. Are you a manager that hedges your bets? Are you a manager that goes all out? And I think the ceiling here is the highest out of any of the viable chip strategies. The veteran managers such as yourself will say the last 3 are very simple. Jota, Cancelo, Trent, very straightforward argument. You bench boost holding these 3. The 2 fixtures after 23-24 for Liverpool or City are good, so what is the point of moving off them? And most likely that's what I'm thinking as well. Plus, you need to have a contingency plan to get Salah back in. But this is exciting because the rest of the options have the highest ceiling. I'm thinking kind of 11, 12 double game weekers and 3 premium single game weekers is what I would wildcard into in game week 21. So that's where I'm at with my head. Basically, I'm playing the vanilla kind of boring route in terms of how I would wildcard into a bench boost.
I like this option a lot as well. For those who are quite far away from attacking the double game week, I think a wildcard in 21 makes a lot of sense. You get 2 benefits. One, you could benefit from the double-double. So you will know by game week 21. Of course, you won't play a chip in 21, but you can still target the teams that double twice. And then in the second one, you can use the bench boost. And I slightly disagree on the cheap options. I think we're really, really blessed in this double with cheap options, because when has it been that we can get 4.4 or 4.5 million defenders from Spurs and Man United?
True,
I mean, we have these options now. West Ham, we've got Bowen and Antonio, who are hopefully fine by then, who are also not super expensive. I mean, they're 6.5 and 7.5 now. You've got Norwich with a potential double. You've got Pookie, who's pretty cheap. Brighton's got a good double, potentially a double. You have Duffy at 4.1. You have good defenders as well. Crystal Palace, as I mentioned, Guaita or Sanchez. So it's. I think so. So options are there. We also talked about Aston Villa, 5.1 cash. Watkins at 7 million. There's not many premiums to get other than Ronaldo and Son. So you can build a very good squad in Wildcard 21.
Yes.
My only issue with bench boost with this option is basically, number one, obviously COVID. So what happens when you wildcard in 21, you have a period, we've mentioned this, of 2 weeks from the time you wildcard to your bench boost. Usually you want this to be 0 because you want to basically have a custom made, ready to go bench boost team that can just play.
Yep.
But unfortunately, you can't use 2 chips in one game week. So you have to wildcard the week before, which basically means you're sitting there waiting for the 3rd round of the FA Cup and then or potential doubles, and then you bench boost. So what happens if you get a couple of injuries or somebody, gets COVID, unfortunately? That's the main issue with targeting a bench boost. And if, for example, 2 of your players or 3 of your players are out, you've suddenly wildcarded in a game week where you can't bench boost. So now you've almost wasted the wild card, if you see what I mean.
Okay.
That's my main issue with this strategy, or the main risk. Of course, there is a risk in anything that you do, but I do like this a lot. If there's managers who are thinking about it, and again, let's play into the fact that now you have 2 free hit chips, you're not really losing out in the future because you could just free hit in game week 30 when there's a big blank, and you could again free hit again in game week 36 when there's a big double. So you're not really missing out on future bonanza points because you can get that later. So anyone who's thinking about it, very viable, very good strategy. And last point that I want to make on this one is, it's not that you can't get Salah back. You can just Ronaldo to a mid back to Salah to somebody else is perfectly viable as well. So it's not that your money will be spread. Maybe the second keeper you don't need, but then somebody could counter argue and say this is the time actually to have a second keeper more than any other time in this that we've played the game, because you just never know which game is postponed, right? So having a second keeper, maybe an 8th attacker, is not the worst thing in the world. So I like this strategy a lot.
Yeah, and I'll quickly add to this, Pras. I did mention previously before you spoke about trying to triple up, but you don't need to triple up. So I came up with a wildcard sort of in my head of what I would get kind of wildcard into that's also very sustainable after you play the bench boost in 22. As you mentioned, things might change. If that's the case, I don't mind taking up 1 or 2 hits to get rid of some, I guess, COVID issues or injuries. Who knows, right? Between those 13 days. But here's what I came up with: De Gea, Bachmann. This is my wild card in 21 because I have enough of a team to get through 20. De Gea, Bachmann, Cancelo, TAA, Diaz or Laporte, Livra. Maybe not Livra, but Livra because
wait. So you go double City defense even though they don't have a double.
I would.
Okay.
And Davis or Reguilon. All of this can be shifted to have maybe two Spurs instead of 2 City. Jota, Foden or Bernardo, Son, Bowen, Gallagher, and up top Ronaldo, King, and possibly Antonio or downgrade to Broya. So this is very, I'm speaking off the top of my head almost, but that's about 3 or 4 single game week players, but very good long-term holds from strong teams. So with that team, I would be happy to bench boost. And another important thing about this is just because you have double game week players, sometimes you're also hedging your bets because Everton and Leicester play each other, and Watford and Crystal Palace play each other in the double game week. So those are other things to consider. I don't want the viewers to kind of think of what I just mentioned in terms of a wild card as something serious because, again, it's very off the top of my head. But I do not mind having 3 or 4 single game week players that are long-term holds from good teams. Or strong
Depending on where we go, maybe next week we can do a free hit 22 and a wild card 21 draft discussion. I think that would be nice.
Yeah, a lot of good content stuff coming up. Let's go to the last one, which is first wildcard holders. And we've got people clapping for them because good on you guys. I'm very jealous that you do have your wildcard. I think it's a extreme benefit to have it right now. I mean, not much to say. I think if you have your wildcard, this is what I would do. First question I ask myself, do you like the 4 teams that have doubles or not? If yes, you wildcard to bring in a bunch of them. If no, you stick to whoever you have and look extremely long-term. For instance, maybe even keeping Salah for the precious 0.3. Keep the Chelsea defender, which you have stored up value in Reece James. And also keep a Villa asset. And use the free hits now on the 4 or 5 teams mentioned in Game Week 22. I think that's kind of what I'm thinking for first wildcard holders. But what do you think, Pras?
I'm not a fan of that. I mean, it's okay to disagree. I think the wildcard, the people who've now held on to a first wildcard are in an extremely privileged position. You have to go for the bench boost, in my view, because firstly, let's get the timing right. So you have to play your first wildcard before the next game week. So I think it's the 28th of December, which is the last date. So you watch what happens this game week. After that, you attack the next 3 weeks. And the next 3 weeks entails essentially everything that we've talked about in this. If you take out this week, I really like Villa. I really like Watford. We talked about Spurs, Man United. You attack these guys, fill your team with them. Hopefully you'll have some news on the double as well. But all these guys could potentially double. So you fill that team and you attack a bench boost. You then have the option of wildcarding out of that bench boost if you wanted, or if not, you just stay. You have 2 free hits, and now you're just laughing because nobody will be in that position that you are, where you have a perfectly tailored bench boost as well as a wildcard and 2 free hits later, and triple captain. We haven't even talked about triple captain. So I think you have to set up for this bench boost in 22 because it's been presented to you in a way where it's just 2-3 weeks away. And if it requires 1 or 2 hits to get to that, maybe some injuries come up between game week 20 and 22, you take the hits, you get there, you get the bench boost out of the way. That would be my view.
Yeah, I think this question was asked very last minute before we did the stream. So I just put down some thoughts, but I think it's okay to kind of admit your mistakes. And I do agree with you here, actually. That sounds great. Wildcard in 20. I would wait till next week, not this week, because we want as much news as possible and closer to game week 22. Bench boost in 2022, right? And then go from there.
It's perfect. It's perfect because this week you can even lose Salah next week. I mean, you basically wildcard out Salah. Yes, he plays Leicester. That's one game that you miss, but I think that's enough of a risk you could take that you basically build that wildcard next week or take Salah out. You could potentially take, maybe keep James, but the second Chelsea defender out. This week is the one that maybe you can avoid Son because he plays Palace. If you can get him next week, get Ronaldo next week once you know better about how Man United are looking after playing Newcastle. I think it's perfect. You guys are very, very lucky, and we are all very envious of you first wildcard holders.
Yeah. Last point. I think next week we'll talk about the second free hit and optimal strategy for that. But for the listeners that are joining now, we did talk about free hit earlier. I'll timestamp it after this video is finished. And I think that what we talked about earlier should give you a decent idea of how you could use the free hits. I see 3 timings here. Could be one of the game weeks 21, 22, 27, as we mentioned, and 30. So, or the doubles that are going to come up in, would you say 31, 36 or something like that?
33 and 30. Usually 32, 33 and 36 are doubles.
Yeah. So we'll mention that next time. Should we move to the bus teams because we are 1 hour and 20 minutes in, Pras?
Yep, let's do it. Well, hopefully we've covered all the options of strategy. By the way, what we didn't cover is what are you thinking of?
In terms of what?
In terms of your chip strategy.
As I mentioned, I'm thinking of wildcard in 21 and.
Oh, you are looking to wildcard. Oh, I missed that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm considering it. I listen again because remember when we mentioned in option 3 how not using any chips. That's the base of all this discussion for me, because if we're able to get towards a team that we like in 22, maybe I don't need to bench boost and I'm happy with my starting 11, or I have the option to bench boost without a wild card, then I'll do that. I'll take the 2 or 3 hits necessary, plus the 4 available free transfers leading up to that. But if I'm not happy with that, then I'll wild card in 21. And even if things change in between the 13 days, I'll take 1 or 2 more hits to bench boost in 22 because I just want to get rid of bench boost. As you mentioned, I don't think it's a strong chip. It's a decent chip, but yeah.
Yeah, I think bench boost has the risk of ruining teams because they just then spread out too much, or they plan too much for this bench boost and ignore the other good options because their money is tied up in that bench. I don't like that chip either. I mean, for me, free hit, as I said, is the best chip. And now we have 2 free hits. So this completely changes how you plan going forward after the 22. So yeah, I like that. Okay,
I
shall we
read
do the
somewhere.
bus team?
I read somewhere that you cannot consecutively play the free hit chip, so something to consider as well.
I don't think people will be looking to free hit twice anyway.
Yeah.
I can say right now, I'm pretty sure game week 30 blank and game week 36 double is when I'll be using the free hit chip. Of course,
You heard
information
it here
changes and
first.
views change, but right now, that's what I would do.
Okay, great. Okay, we have your team up here, Pras. What are you thinking? By the way, how much in the bank and how many transfers do you have?
Something like 3.5 in the bank. Basically, exact money to take Lacazette up to Ronaldo. I won't do it this week because Lacazette. I think the Norwich game, it looks to be on. So as long as that's on, there's no reason to sell Lacazette. But the idea was that if that game was off, then I can obviously upgrade Lacazette to Ronaldo. Basically, my thinking is I'm going to react to postponements, but I won't be afraid to take a hit. I think everyone is obviously saying if you can save a transfer, of course you save a transfer. I think that advice works for 38 game weeks, by the way. But if this is the week where I find out that two of my players are out, and so, for example, Antonio and Bowen, you then try to think of a structure, even if it needs hits, to move closer to the 22 setup that you want. That's my thinking, because I don't want to wildcard before 22. So that's the idea. So let's hypothetically play a scenario where Bowen and Antonio are out. I'm not going to take them out because they potentially have a double, but I will look to upgrade Brownhill so that I can play somebody for Brownhill who also doubles in 22 and just keep Antonio and Bowen on the bench. So that's the kind of thinking I'm trying to get to. I like Gallagher a lot for Brownhill, but he plays Spurs this week. Maybe I won't go there. We'll see. But as an example, if the Arsenal game is off, my transfer was Foster to Sanchez, because then I would have a keeper this week and then also a keeper that doubles in 22. There's so much new information and thinking going on. It's hard to just say what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
But all I would say is I'm trying to be flexible depending on postponements.
Yep. And wait till the last minute for deadline changes as well.
Oh yeah, absent any information, I'll be saving transfer.
I just want to ask one question. Last week you were contemplating the Saka move for a hit. You ended up not doing it. What was that? Was that the move you were considering?
It was the move last week simply because of the postponements and the fact that I wouldn't have been able to put out 11. But then once the Watford game was out as well, sorry, the Villa game was off as well, I was going to be off by a long distance, and I just didn't feel it because I wanted the option of getting Ronaldo if I wanted this week. I'm not going to do it, but that's the reason why I didn't go Saka, because I'm sort of okay with that, because if people took a hit to get Saka in, I think you did that. If you then have to take a hit to get Saka out as well, then basically I was better off not going there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in essence, it was 1 or 2 point gain, so I don't think it was worth it. But again, I was chasing the upside there, so I don't mind. Looks like Antonio does have COVID, so that's very unfortunate, according to a comment. So we'll see how that develops.
Yep.
Okay, and here's my team. Right now, I'm playing a 3-5-2. Maybe I don't take any hits and I just move forward. Or not hits, any transfers, and I move forward, because if Foden does play, this seems like a viable strategy. Chelsea game might get cancelled. Happy with the two Arsenal boys. Hopefully Watford plays. Hopefully all these teams play, but you just never know. The thing I'm thinking about is moving towards 22 double game week. So Spurs is urgency for me because they proved that they played well, and I know people are saying just one game, it's against Liverpool, but they've been playing well over the last few game weeks, and I'd rather get on Spurs earlier than United, even though United have a better fixture right now, because we just don't know how they're going to do. So it's a wait and watch for me. So that brings Son and Davis into my primary watch list, and so I could do Foden to Son because I have money in the bank. I could do Alonso to a City defender, but then that goes away from 22 unless I'm doubling up on the City defense. Or I could do a downgrade from Alonso to Davis and continue to create funds elsewhere.
Right.
So yeah, that's where I'm at. But what do you think, Pras? What do you
Well, my
suggest?
question to you is, if you're firm on your plan for the wild card, then you basically have a free hit kind of transfer, right? You can get anyone who excites you over the next 2 weeks.
Yep, yep.
So who is that player is the question.
That would be Son.
Of course,
But
that's Son, but then that's at the expense of Foden, right?
but
Is
you
that
know,
is that what you're thinking?
the counter argument to that is the fact that I'm not 100% sure, but because that's why I'm treading this kind of iffy in between line where maybe I can get away without using a wild card by 22. So I want to build towards that 22. But if I know for sure I'm going to do in 21, you're right. I'll just take some punts for the next 2 game
Mhm.
weeks. So yeah, I
Fair
think
enough.
that's good, right? We had another very long session. It was a pleasure to speak to you again, Pras. Thank you guys so much for joining on a Wednesday. It's been an amazing journey with you and the Burning Question series. So I hope to continue to learn and get better at what we do. So any final words, Pras?
No, not really. I mean, I think this has been fun. We'll try to react to stuff. I mean, this is what we'll do. Whatever comes up over the weekends, and man, there's a lot happening. So we'll try to kind of react to things as they come up. But I think for now, it's good news and bad news that we have a second free hit. Good news in the sense that it's exciting. Bad news in the sense that some people who've been worse affected by the postponements are going to sort of fall further behind because the free hit is basically an equal advantage to everybody. But there's nothing FPL can do about it. That's just the luck element of the game. But otherwise, no, it's been hopefully interesting for everyone. When it comes to chip strategies, it's never one size fits all. So people hopefully can take out of it some of the things that we talk about that's relevant to them.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'll say is I know people are struggling to see the point of this game at times, especially with all the changes and luck becoming such a big thing over weeks of planning. But as LR posted recently, try to keep chipping away. Still a long way to go to the end of the season, and your rank at 38 is the one that counts. So have fun, enjoy the chaos, embrace the chaos, and we'll figure it out. And it's been a fun half of the season, and hopefully the rest of the season goes according to plan. So thank you guys again for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and we will join you again next week.